is Talking to My Thoughts.
We can logically articulate what it is to be a leader, what is required, kind of like how you did in that conversation. But the thing that I actually started to realize as to how a person could potentially go into the false leader side to it is down to ego. A person basically passing on their knowledge, but in an egotistical way. Them saying that my way is the way, and not allowing kind of a leeway. Again for you, Mr. Odel, Anthony. Sorry, you've been a teacher for 24 years.
Yeah,
that's a lot of different personalities to teach. And if you had an ego about how you taught and what you believe is right and wrong, you may not have lasted that long. Maybe we wouldn't have seen you the same way, and a lot of people might have gone down the wrong road, and then somebody could come along and say that's a false teacher. But you passing on your knowledge to what an individual needs, or what you believe is a guide. You said it at the end. You said that there's a leader supposed to provide a role model, or a father figure supposed to provide a foundation, not the silhouette of what you're supposed to become. It's supposed to be a foundation, and then they can grow from that. And then the only way that you can really, and the person who's receiving it should also have questions as to do I agree with this part? Like this part is good, but this part isn't. But that part is harder as the ages go younger, because there needs a gain of self-awareness. And some people don't become self-aware until their 30s, 40s. Yeah, you understand? Yeah, so that's what I really picked up, that you really articulated it very well. So I thought, well, what's the missing piece? And the missing piece is, can a person get over their own ego as a leader? And then can a person, as they go through their ages, be self-aware enough to know when to question? Because what's happening is that how people become false leaders is people just absorb it like it's cookie dough, and they're like, yo, this is good stuff. And they say this is the way to be because this person has been, I don't know, probably most cases they're successful, or they're higher, or some people just are placing a person on a pedestal because of their age. Like you're 30, you're 10 years away from me, and you're still alive, and you're looking good on the outside. You must be doing good. So my question really would be, no, I don't have a question actually. I'm gonna let everybody. Yeah, I don't have a question. I'm gonna let this go. Go ahead, Simon.
Okay, so obviously knowing your background, obviously we've been educated by you, and as Craig said, you've obviously been a role model to us in many respects. Just listening to that voice note, you definitely internalized a lot of it, and I felt that what you questioned in yourself is that false leadership. That's that thing that kind of threw you off. From what I heard you speaking about, it was like, well, it's easy to talk about role models, it's easy to talk about father figures, this is what this looks like, but that false leadership, man, that's throwing me. And I think because it was such an internal thought, the question I would have for you is, I guess there's two parts to it. The first thing is, have you ever considered yourself to be a false leader or questioned your leadership? And the second part to that is, what does that look like? What does false leadership look like to you?
So, good question. I don't think that I have considered myself to be a false leader at any given point, because I think just the way I am, I'm not really an ego type of person. I want to see people go and grow. Do you know what I mean? It's not about me. It's never been about me. I think what was really hard about it was I see lots of people who other people are drawn to. I can see it clearly. And maybe through age and experience, I can maybe question certain things about, whereas I can see other people maybe just accept it blindly. So, but again, it's not for me to make that decision for them. And that's why it's always a struggle, because I could give you my opinion, but you still have to make your choice. I could show you perspective, but you might say, but this is what I want to do anyway. And I think it's really hard, particularly when you know, not that you're trying to save everyone, but you want to see everyone do well. I want to see everyone do well. That's just what I want. And it's not that, you know, sometimes people make a decision that has long-term consequences, and sometimes I wish I could have helped them to not have to go through that. But I know I can't. I know it's not for me. You know, that's we make our choices. We live through the consequences. But sometimes you just think, you know what I mean? If you know, so that was stretching me left, right, and center. In terms of what does false leadership look like? Again, it could look like lots of different things and lots of different people. For me, I suppose it's interesting what Craig said, because for me, it is nearly always linked to ego. And people either wanting to create clones of themselves, or just reinforce their message and almost make I don't know, it's almost like replacing the questions with statements. So here the truth for them just lives in statements, as opposed to in the process of questioning and learning. And so, yeah, I think that, I suppose in any kind of thing where you're in front of people, someone could at some point say, hey, Mr. Odel, you're a false teacher. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know, I suppose it's funny. I was talking to some kids the other day, and I was just saying to them, you know, my one bit of advice would just put all your energy into being one man. Just be that one man. So that wherever people meet you, they meet the same person, regardless of the context. And I think that's what I've tried to do. So all this other stuff, and playing all these different roles, and being one person for someone and one person, I don't know. It's like, for me, it just seems like a lot of work. Do you know what I mean? I think that it's in my life, I found it easier to just be that one man, and to stand on the things that I stand on, because then, number one, I know who I am and where I am at any given point. And yeah, so
that's interesting though, actually, because thinking about that as you said that, because the question I kind of asked you is, how do you identify what does a false leader look like to you? And it is actually very subjective, because even in the eyes of the false leader, they may not even think they're the false leader. They may think that everything they're talking about is correct, and that comes back to ego. So it's the traits, and I guess what you identify as that doesn't align with you, well, that doesn't quite work. As a leader, they're not the person that should be a role model to me or should be leading me. But then for someone else, they'll be like, oh, that guy's speaking the truth. He knows exactly what he's talking about. I'm going with that guy. So yeah, 100%. It's subjective, and I didn't actually think about it like that. So yeah, man. Peace.
It's well, just to like come off of that. The funny thing about it is so subjective. Like right now we're having this conversation. I could probably pick, oh yeah, this is a false leader, that's a false leader, this is and in my eyes, if the person ain't done something that's beneficial to me, of course I'm gonna see as a false leader, because everyone's putting him on a pedestal and I don't like him or her. And then but there's some people that are completely moved by that. Their world has changed because of that person. So they're going to see completely different. So yeah, very subjective. And I always, the word that always comes up in my head when I think about false leaders is, the road to hell is paved by good intentions. That leader probably isn't thinking, I'm going to be a false leader and lead these people to hell. They never say that. But they really think, oh, I see the world in this way. And if I had more people seeing it this way, the world would be great. But and in the same words, I've asked people this: do you believe there is a utopia? Do you believe there is a world where everything is exactly the way you said it should be, and everything is good? Do you not see that there is benefits of there being the bad, the hard, the rough, etc.? So it's always a very interesting question on that part. PJ, man, I'm ready to listen to this. PJ, what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm in the magic situation of having been able to listen. So I had my own thoughts first, and then they're being interjected by what's being said, and especially what Anthony's sharing. And like it's crazy. I know we've got a teacher in the place, but I've got my notebook out and I've been having to take some notes just so that I can not forget my thoughts. I don't know who taught me that, but we'll give it to Mr. Odel for that. And I think there's just so many questions on this one. I just think there's so much, and I want to respond firstly to the thought provoking thinking and thoughts and reflection from Anthony first, because I could speak a little bit about the false leaders part of it, but I found the kind of beginning part of your thoughts really interesting about the visibility in particular. And before we played your voice note, it was like we were almost questioning what makes you a role model, what makes you a leader, what makes you a false leader. And the example about Rihanna is a really important one, because it's like, just because you may think someone is a leader doesn't mean that they are. And just because you don't know about somebody else doesn't mean that person's not a leader. And the visibility bit is the crucial bit, right? It's like, how is that a determining factor in that person being a leader and being an effective one? So I think that was really that's something I'm still thinking about, and just wanted to mark that at the beginning. I guess my thoughts were about the false leadership part of it was that there's so many questions here. First, like, there's premises. The lawyer mind in me says, okay, we need to break this up so that we're along the right lines, right? And you come up with your definitions and premises. And the first one is leadership, right? Before you can be a false leader, you need to be aware of what makes you a leader, and you have to be on the same lines about what that is. And I've got some kind of radical views about leadership, and there's as follows, really. First, leadership is irrespective of your qualities of leadership. You can be a leader irrespective of your qualities of leadership. They are different things, right? And yes, the qualities of leadership might make you a better leader or a bad leader, but it doesn't determine whether you are a leader. And so for me, what determines if you are a leader is following. If you have following, you are a leader. If you do not have following, you're not a leader. It's that simple. And so then you start to think, okay, well, loads of people have following, right? You think about Instagram and Twitter and the millennial followings that people have. I think this is when we start moving into, okay, well, these people are leaders, but maybe this is how we started to create these kind of false leaders, or even more of them. Because another premise of leadership for me is that that leadership is based around relationship. So without relationship, you can't be the leader you're trying to be. There's a relationship between the people you are leading and the leader. If you think about a teacher, there's an innate relationship there that comes from this kind of self-interest of both people. If you think about a priest, they're a leader because there's a relationship between each person, and each person has a self-interest in that relationship. And I don't think self-interest is bad. I know I'm throwing that word in here, but I don't think that's bad. Like Mr. Odel, Anthony, being aware that it makes him feel good is part of his moral fiber, that to uplift people, to help people reach their potential, he gets something out of that relationship of leadership. And I think that's a good thing and something to be aware of, right? And so when there's a lack of relationship, that's when there's a problem, because one, you haven't taken into consideration the people you're leading and their interests to help mold that relationship and mold the way you lead. And then the kind of there's two other things that I think are the premises that come from leadership, which is one, that leadership is not static. This situation here, as surreal as it is a great example, right? There was a time where we were sitting in front of a Mr. Odel and Mr. Alexander, and you don't speak back, and you listen and you learn from them. And now we're in a situation where Anthony, Mr. Odel, is here with us, listening to us, sharing his thoughts, listening to our thoughts, and hopefully he's going to take something away. If anything, being here is showing that he feels there's something he can take away and develop and learn. And that is an example. If we're saying the premise is that Anthony is a leader, that leadership is not static, that you can move from being a leader and a follower, and you can move, and that's part of leadership even. And then the last thing, and this is kind of what Mr. Odel was talking about, was, the one thing you should do is just be one man. Wow, that hit me. That was just like, that is it. That is magic. There's always magic, the gold dust. And it's like, when we talk about masculinity, when we think about manning up, when we think about growing up and our journeys, right? There's so much confusion and differences and leaders that you can pick and false leaders out there and all that kind of stuff. But if you are aware of your own interests, your own care for the kind of man you want to be, that one person, then that is the right place. In that place, you can be honest. In that place, you can make good decisions about who you want to learn from, who you want to be guided by, who you can guide. And so it ties into leadership that, yes, I can be a leader, but if I'm not honest about the person that I'm trying to be, and therefore how I'm leading, then that's how I become a false leader. And I think I give one example. I forget his name now, but someone's going to blurt it out for me. This guy that has been going viral because he cheated on his wife. Yeah. What's his name?
Derek.
Mr. Derek. Yeah. I'm going to reserve any judgment of Derek, but for the topic, for this context, Derek is a false leader, not because he made mistakes, not because he doesn't have following, not because he doesn't have a relationship with the people that he was leading, but rather because he wasn't being the man he was saying he wanted to be, right? He wasn't being honest with his own journey of saying, okay, this is how we should be trying to be, and I'm trying to be like that. Instead, he was on his own pedestal. He had that ego going on, and therefore, in his mistakes, he can't continue to lead us. Whereas if he had been open to the one man he's trying to be, then he can be that leader, even in his mistakes. So, for me, just to round up, I think leadership, to be a leader, you just need following. You must have following, and that's the foundation to it. And then where you start to decipher whether that leader is false or worthy, really, is whether they exercise that leadership in a static fashion or a free flowing back and forth fashion. Again, is the leadership that they're kind of exuding or delivering, is it built on relationship? Are they aware of their own self-interest and the self-interest of those they're leading? And is that the relationship they've built? And then are they honest as a person? Are they honest of the person they're trying to be on how they're leading? And if so, then worthy. If not, then false.